welcome to my 7.44 home media room theater system.
I'm Alex Otto of OSW Audio. We're based out of Tempe, Arizona.
The inspiration was I built it to use it. So have had a home theater for 25 years. Previous one was more of a DIY project and put it together myself and enjoyed it. And as we were building a new home in Utah, the design of this room was part of the design of the house.
We design and commission and provide calibrations for private screening rooms, recording studios, Dolby Atmos production rooms, 2-channel hi-fi rooms, anything audio specific and centric, we're focused there.
Yeah, I mean, this is the place I come at the end of the day, well, sometimes at 2 p.m. to listen to some mellow jazz and just chill out and take a nap. And sometimes after dinner, my wife and I use the room to watch a show together. And then she'll go to bed and I'll stay up and listen to music. Have a glass of bourbon, a glass of tequila, listen to some good music, watch a movie, pretty much use the room every night.
So upon visiting the site for the first time, and in full disclosure, I did get to design the room, so I had a fairly high expectations of what we could achieve in the space because we had engineered it from the beginning. So I wasn't walking in cold, and oftentimes I am. So if I'm providing a calibration solely for a client, it was perhaps designed by somebody else, not sure what I'm walking into. You're going to have as you walk around in a space, and if you do this work enough, you're listening quite closely to how the room is behaving just to your spoken voice and just walking around and having normal conversation and engagement. This room, right out of the box, walking in, was quite good. I was quite happy with how everything had turned out. Now, of course, all of this, we go through a lot of engineering and modeling and do our best effort to have some kind of predictable result. But then, of course, you're going to involve construction and materials vary, and there's other variables that we're not able to account for. And gratefully, this room was solid. The builder was a pleasure to work with. They were conscientious. They were following up with us. They were making sure that they were doing the best execution possible, so we could deliver the client the best end result. So, in all fairness, I had pretty high expectations coming in because we did get to work on it from the onset. And gratefully, upon walking in for the first time, I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, every room's going to have challenges, and I'm sure you'll see this later in the video, but we have a wall of glass. That's always going to be a big challenge. Is this going to work out for us in the end? And of course, we're in a situation where it's we're not in a dedicated room. It's kind of I would say very high spec. I don't even want to call it a media room. It's such a beautiful high spec room, but it's not a dedicated cinema, right? So we're not a complete blackout. We didn't have complete freedom and flexibility to build the walls as deep as we needed to accommodate acoustic treatment. So we're always managing expectations and the compromises. There's always, no matter what we do, there's always going to be some factor of compromise. I mean, ideally, we wouldn't have to put doors in the room. They'd be a lot easier to design and isolate, and that would solve a lot of problems. But, we got to get people in and out of here. And so all of these, gratefully, the room worked out quite well. Quite happy with this room.
A bunch of movies have good demo clips where, it's a good 3-minute ride. Blade Runner 2030 has a few really good scenes. John Wicks are really fun. Any good action movie with a good mix is fun to show off.
Here we go.
Controls won't work here. We're passing through the bulk. Space beyond our 3 dimensions. All you can do is record and observe.
What is that?
It's them.
Distorting space-time. Don't!
So, much like the home, it's the time that was put into design it, put it together, and it's satisfying to have a vision, both aesthetically and acoustically, where you want to get to, and then see it come together. And it's a lot of work, right? So you don't just sort of dream it and then it happens. You have to put the legwork in. You have to research things. You have to figure out what works. And it's kind of the holistic of what everything together, how it plays together. So it's a process. And it's fun to see after you put the time in, it's fun just to sit back and mindlessly enjoy it.
So calibrations and when we're dealing with getting a room online, a lot of it's an iterative process, right? So we're going to make some adjustments, some listen, do a lot of listening. And the difference between the first visit for the calibration and then and a revisit, and I do this oftentimes, we'll go back and revisit a room. Oftentimes with subwoofers, we need motors to break in. We need things to, their motors are mechanical parts. They're going to behave a little differently after they've been run in. And in all honesty, in this room, what changed significantly was I really had a much better understanding and appreciation of how to integrate the Harbottle subs that are present in this room, the four 18-inch subwoofers. On the first go around, I can say full stop, I didn't understand the full potential that was available in these custom subwoofers. So I think between spending some time with the owner of Harbottle Audio, with Cody, getting a deeper understanding of what these were capable of providing, made me more comfortable in coming in and being able to push them and lean on them and understand really what the limits are with these subwoofers in this room. So that probably was the biggest, certainly the biggest change we made was in how the subwoofers were behaving and how they were integrated and handed off to the main loudspeakers.
The space was designed in total, so it was a new build, so it has flexibility to design the room out as part of the whole. So every room has compromises, so it was getting the mix correct between getting the sound for movies right and the format for visually watching movies right, mixed with enjoying 2-channel sound. So finding that balance where you can enjoy both is hard. If you're building a dedicated room for just movies, it's a whole lot easier than if you throw music into the mix.
So when calibrating these systems, I'm generally leaning towards an accurate reproduction. We want to be faithful to whatever's coming off of the content. Ideally, the system should be able to play back whatever the content is doing at the highest resolution. Now, I think if the question was, am I aiming for accuracy or emotional impact? I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think you can get both, and ideally, if I've done my job well, I think you get that. And certainly, as we were referencing earlier, the first visit versus the second visit, in which I was able to push and lean on the subwoofers in a more appropriate way, we got more of that emotional impact and that fun feeling. I mean, I think with the calibration at my job, and I think this is true of any calibrator, we have to understand 100% the technical aspects. What's going on in the room? What's a loudspeaker capable of? What's a subwoofer doing? How are they all interacting in the space? And we have to take that and translate that also into what the client likes. I mean, there are target curves, there are industry standards and so forth. And as a general statement, I would say, yeah, we start there and we say, okay, this is what reference is. And that's a whole nother 2-hour discussion about whether that makes sense also. I mean, applying a cinema curve for a 500 seat theater in a room that's 20 feet deep doesn't make a lot of sense, right? That's a whole different can of worms. But to be able to then deliver to the client something that's faithful to the content, that allows the content to be what it is. So in this room, if the song's bright, it better sound bright. If it's rounder, duller, an older recording, it should sound like that. The system, and in my opinion, the system really shouldn't impart its own character onto the proceedings, because now everything sounds the same, which isn't anybody's intent, and I don't think anybody's getting any value out of it if that's the case. And part of that is the calibration, the equipment that's chosen, the room. The room is probably the biggest, factor in making that translation, because the loudspeaker's never operating in a vacuum or in an anechoic chamber, right? The loudspeaker goes in a room. It's a system. We have to treat it that way. And so I think from the calibrator's standpoint, we have to know how to make, I always would joke about, when making recordings, you have to know which way to, where to point the microphone at the kick drum to get the recording. But getting the emotional impact, getting the performance out of the equipment, that's where our value really is. And a lot of that's experience. A lot of it is knowing when to stop, which is also there's something you learn over doing this for a long time, that, pulling in a bunch of filters to make the line a flat line doesn't, when you hit play 9 times out of 10, it just doesn't sound as good. We can listen through a lot of the little challenges that show up to a microphone. And the thing to remember with the microphone is not connected to this DSP. Should you elect to use this DSP in your hearing mechanism in your brain, like, it'll filter a lot of stuff out. But it's a very different, the experience from what the microphone and the software sees, and the emotional experience that a human has engaging with the content. Two very different things. The microphone, the software, all of this is going to help us inform the decisions. I have to have, as a calibrator, I kind of look at it like you're almost like a mixer, like mixing a record. You get hired for your taste and your ability to get the client what they ultimately want. I know what I like, I know what I like to hear, and how I like the presentation to be, and that's not always what the client likes. And again, pointing out that you have to be able to get that to the client. And I think between the two, the accuracy and the emotional impact, I think they work hand in hand. Because if you get the system playing and behaving correctly, the emotional impact and all that's the decisions in the content. Right. And so if I can remove the anomalies of parking a loudspeaker inside of a room, right, we've now committed acoustics, and we have to deal with all those problems. If these were all just outside and we could listen outside, it would be it'd be a lot easier proposition. But you get that sorted out, and now the emotional intent, whatever's in the content, it's free to blow your mind.
When I host movie nights, quite frankly, I'm doing it for myself. I enjoy watching, and I'm happy if people enjoy and want to be with me and watch it, but I'm not doing it to show the room off or to show the system off. This is purely for my amusement and my enjoyment. Yeah, It's fun watching a simple show with my wife and daughter, and it has three prime seats, and we can all sit with the dogs and you know sit under a blanket and watch a fun show together. So it's good family time. If I was to give guidance on designing or building out a home theater, I would take your time, do your research, focus on the room first, because if the room isn't right, it doesn't matter how much money you throw at equipment. And if you don't have the skill set to do it yourself, find a professional who you trust, because acoustics really play into the room. If the room doesn't, at the baseline, provide a good environment for your speakers to shine, you're wasting money. An amplifier change, a changing cables is money poorly spent. Spend the money on the room, get the geometry right, get your seating correct, place the speakers where they need to be, get it tuned correctly. There's a lot of things in the chain, and if you blow one of them, it doesn't come together correctly. If you kind of take your time and read your way through and get a holistic sense of everything together, you can have a really fun system.
Anytime we put a loudspeaker in a room, we're going to have some anomalies, and especially as the rooms get smaller, right? As we get smaller and smaller, we're going to have modal resonances and ringing. And as you can imagine, anybody who's been around the block a couple times is going to go, yeah, it was probably the low end. Yeah, the mid-range and the high frequencies are quite easy to deal with, right? The wavelengths are really short. It's a lot easier to deal with 5 kilohertz than 5 hertz, than 5 cycles. That's a big problem. These resonances and ringing are all directly related to the dimensions of the room. So in this room in particular, we had, this room, again, we're dealing with these compromises. I didn't get to build a 5-foot deep trap in the back of this room like I might do in a commercial recording studio, right? So Warm Audio, for example, out in Austin, Texas, that visibly, the back of the room is another almost 4 foot deep in trapping to deal with those modal resonances and ringing that get established in the room. Here we didn't have that luxury. Now we did get to build a pretty nice broadband trap that was probably good down to 100, maybe a little below 100 with the limited space we had. But 29 cycles fits this dimension front to back, the longest first order axial mode in the room, and that of course very easy. If it's a resonant frequency, that's where we have the most efficiency. You don't have to put a lot of energy in the room to get that imbalanced from everything else in the spectrum, right? We're targeting for balance across the entire spectrum. So 29 cycles. Well, how are we going to deal with it? Well, I can't make the room bigger. That's already baked in, right? So that's done. We can't fill the room full of traps. What are we going to do? We're going to leverage the power of placing multiple subwoofers throughout the room. And to be clear, the multiple subwoofer concept, like this isn't in lieu of any acoustic treatment. This is in conjunction with other acoustic treatment. I mean, there's no solution. And gratefully, most of the company, any of the companies that are dealing with correction systems, they're never going to stand in front of a camera and tell you, "Yep, use a Trinnov, use a Storm. You don't have to do anything other than that." Of course, everyone understands we have to have some acoustic control and treatment in the room. And you start with a broadband approach, which we did here. The whole ceiling is a big broadband absorber. The front wall's got absorption, and even little things. A couch is going to be a low frequency absorber. A lot of the this resonance and this ringing, that's going to all manifest at the boundaries. The only thing that 50 cycles sees in the room is the walls, right? 50 cycles is going to see you in like whatever, right around you. It's going to manifest as high pressure on the boundaries of the room. And by placing the multiple subwoofers on opposite poles of the same room, we can manage and use some of this behavior and this understanding of that these are pressurization devices, and we use those multiple subwoofers to flatten some of that response. More importantly, the multiple subwoofers distributed around the room will allow us to fill in some of the holes. And if we have these resonances that are going to establish areas in the room where you have really high pressure and when you have nearly nothing, it's really instructive. And kids at home, if you want to go have fun in your room, turn on an 80 cycle sine wave and just walk around your room. And you'll be blown away where you're standing someplace, it completely disappears. Go stand in the corner, it's probably ripping your head off, right? All of the modes terminate in the corners. We know this, and we've all experienced this, right? You're at a party, you're listening to the stereo, you go stand by the corner, you're like, wow, there's all the bottom end. So with the multiple subwoofers, and if we're thinking about them not only as, of course, as a way to extend the low frequency output of the entire system, right? To take some of the load off of the main speakers, right? To provide more energy. Now, there's all these benefits to having subwoofers in the system to begin with, but if we place them in the right places, opposite ends of the room, for example, is quite common. We can use this destructive behavior, this constructive and destructive behavior to our advantage. And a way I like to think about this is if you think of a balloon, right, and you think of that balloon as your room, and on one end of the balloon, I'm going to squeeze on it. So I squeeze on the balloon, and the whole balloon instantaneously expands in all directions. The whole thing moves, right? You have this pressurization. It's almost like your chest, like you take a breath and everything, right? It's not a laser beam. It's not a light beam. It's not 5 kilohertz going, right, like straight out of my face and right towards you, right? The whole room is getting pressurized with a low end. Okay. Now, if I take another subwoofer and put it on the other side of the balloon, and I go and I squeeze at the same time, what happens? Well, now we get stasis. They're finding each other. That's really helpful. We're sitting in the middle of this, and where we had maybe a cancellation, they just went, they filled in. Now, the other thing to realize also is that we put the subwoofers in an area where they're in really high pressure. They're up against the boundary. So that 29 cycles is coming up also. But gratefully, we can use, for example, in the Harbottle audio subs, probably the most capable DSP I've ever seen on board on a subwoofer. I can get into that thing, and I've got high-pass filters, low-pass filters, all-pass filters, multiple bands of EQ, delay, polarity invert, level, everything that you would find in a high-spec loudspeaker processor, like on a touring system, like in a drive rack in a touring system. It's on board on every one of those subwoofers with DSP. So we can go in and manage that, and I can create a filter that matches the resonance. And of course, that means taking high-resolution measurements with lots of microphones and making sure that we're grabbing the correct information, and we can just pull some of those down. The EQ works very effectively there on those resonances and ringing because they're essentially in a small room. They're in high pressure everywhere, right? This 29 cycles, I walk around the room, it's like it's absolutely everywhere. Those wavelengths are really big. The room is small. That we're in a high pressure zone everywhere. Now, if I take that EQ and I'm at 8 kilohertz and I'm looking at one microphone, I probably need to be really careful about what I'm doing because a little bitty move, a little bitty adjustment at 8 kilohertz is going to be very different as you move that microphone around the room. So this application of EQ down low in conjunction with the multiple subwoofers, getting the timing behavior correct so that the subs are playing as one unified system. Using equalization to temper those peaks, those inevitable peaks that we're going to get. But the good news is, what do we get? We got those holes to fill in, and the only way you get that, and the most efficient and easiest way to get that, is to use multiple subwoofers. Most small rooms don't have enough room to afford you to place the monumental amount of passive acoustic devices it would take to improve the situation with multiple subs and some capable DSP to manage and tune the whole system. It's really the most efficient way to solve the problem. And something like, a very sophisticated subwoofer like a Harbottle that's tons of clean output, really capable DSP, that just makes it easier to dial the system in. I have complete flexibility to dial the system in. It makes the handoff to the mains more transparent, so it just sounds like one system. I mean, the best integration with the subwoofers should not call attention to itself. If I turn them off, you should miss them when they're gone, but they shouldn't be barking, saying like, "Hey, I'm a subwoofer, I'm over here." It should be totally seamless transition between those two, and you will miss them when they're gone, but they shouldn't be calling attention to themselves. I feel that's as a general starting point, that's where we would be. So the question of were there some issues in here still? Yeah, I mean every room we're going to encounter this. We're going to try to model. We're going to try to sort it out beforehand, but undoubtedly going in we know, and that's part of the calculus. Okay, we're going to put 4 subs in here. It's going to really enhance the experience, but we're also going to use it essentially as program dependent, program responsive, active acoustic treatment. I never think of the subs just as like, oh, it's this low end noise box thing to make your pants flap. Yeah, you get that. That's exciting, but it's part of it's really, when I'm designing these rooms, it's really a big consideration as part of the active component of an acoustic solution for the room.
So much like the home, it's the time that was put into design it, put it together, and it's satisfying to have a vision, both aesthetically and acoustically, where you want to get to, and then see it come together. And it's a lot of work, right? So you don't just sort of dream it and then it happens. You have to put the legwork in. You have to research things. You have to figure out what works. And it's kind of the holistic of what everything together, how it plays together. So it's a process, and it's fun to see. After you put the time in, it's fun just to sit back and mindlessly enjoy it. I do not often go to a commercial theater because it's really disappointing. I mean, aside from the bonehead chewing popcorn to your left, the sound system isn't as good. The bass isn't as good. The seating's not as comfortable. The image isn't as good. It's just a very different experience. It's pretty fun to have in your own home. A ability to watch a movie as enjoyable as you can get. I mean, when the bass is right, when the speakers are right, when the room is right, and it's comfortable, it's awesome. And then, you get to sit with your own dogs and on the couch, and it's a really enjoyable way to enjoy a movie.
So part of the calibration kit that I carry with me on the software side of things, I'm always traveling with the Rational Acoustics Smart, and have for many, many years. Smart is really good with the real-time feedback. So any changes I make magnitude-wise, I can see it immediately. I'm not waiting on a sweep. It's very fast. I can average multiple microphones. So generally speaking, I have no fewer than 6 microphones out. Obviously, there's going to be one at the reference listening position. I'm going to have others distributed around. If it's a multiple row cinema, for example, we're going to want to see what's going on in all of those rows, because we have to be conscious that any changes that we're making in one row isn't making it worse in the other row. And just something to think about, if you're using Smart or REW, I would say I use REW quite a bit because it excels at giving me some other information, mostly time-related information. The waterfall plots, RT60 times, group delay, those things are a lot easier to manage and see in REW. And it's quite a capable program. But if I'm doing manual calibrations or we're trying to move quickly, maybe I have 2 days in a room, Smart with the ability to average multiple microphone positions and get that instantaneous phase and magnitude feedback, right? Music's 2 things. It's like, it's what note, well, maybe 3 things. What note, how loud, and at what time, right? So you got to be able to see all of those things in the analyzer and in the software. So if you have those 6 microphones out, it's averaging. I'm making adjustments, and I can know that I'm not, first move is to not do any harm, right? So I want to make sure if I'm making one row good, then I'm not making the other rows absolutely horrible. And to that point, if you're at home and you've got a multi-row theater, and you're getting this set up and you have the latitude to move the seats around, as you're determining where do these seats go, remember they don't have to, in the initial, your initial decision isn't like, hey, I need to make all of them perfect. The initial decision should be, I need to make them all behave as similarly as possible before I apply the calibration. Because if row 1 and row 2 are similar, the moves I make are going to be more relevant to both of the. It's gonna translate to both of those locations. So, oftentimes, a lot of us will go down the rabbit hole trying to make each row perfect and make them similar. They need to be similar, because if they're similar, and maybe that is perfect in your room, and you got lucky or did a good job, great. But start with making them similar, so that way what you apply downrange will be relevant to both of the locations, right? You're not sacrificing one for the other. And sometimes the rooms just don't support that. They're not big enough to support having two really good rows. But to get back to the question, smart software is always with me. Quite good. It's worth every penny. It's not an inexpensive proposition, but definitely a professional tool. Go to any concert, the guy's running smart, I guarantee it. REW is really quite good as well. And honestly, the offerings from Andrew Smith over at Studio 6 Digital, really, really quite solid also, and not as expensive as getting, say, into a smart system. He also has a really cool new signal generator called Surround Pod that's solving some really basic issues when we go in to do a calibration. If I'm working on a system that isn't, say, as sophisticated as a Trinov or a Storm, where I can inject my own test signal into it very easily, pull up every loudspeaker and verify, very important word there, verify that what Trinov is telling me it's doing, or Storm is telling me it's doing, that it's actually doing that. I can hear it, I can see it with my own measurement. If the processor isn't sophisticated enough to do that, the Surround Pros become a really nice option. The Surround Pod, because this now allows me to inject into, say, a more budget conscious, more budget friendly, say, Marantz or Denon, into the HDMI input and talk to each one of those speakers independently. It seems like a very simple thing. You're like, why can't I do that already? Well, the more sophisticated processors allow an external signal to come in. The more budget conscious items do not, and I need to know what that thing is doing on its own. With REW, there's some very convoluted workarounds where you can try to get into the top channels, but generally speaking, you're limited to the ear level ring, so you can't get into the high top channels, and it becomes a lot more difficult. So that's kind of a cool, exciting new thing from Studio 6 Digital that I've been playing around with on a couple of jobs, and that's made it really simplified things. So I'd say, REW, smart, the Studio 6 Digital, they've got some nice software, their package. Also, on occasion, we'll use a software called Accurate to generate FIR filters and do some other investigations. But I mean, the bread and butter, what comes out every time, smart and REW, 100%.
The advice I would give myself, happily, I think I did this one right. I think do it once, do it right. I think it's better to have a budget, build it out to your budget, and enjoy it, rather than say, oh, I'm going to get to this later. I'll do this kind of halfway or part way, or, and then I'll add it in. Like, you can do a very nice theater on a reasonable budget if you keep the scale correct and if you pick the equipment correctly, right? And if you have the right room to let it shine. So, spending the money in the right place goes a long way. It's awesome. I mean, it's kind of a dream to kind of walk into a space that conceptually you kind of envisioned, and then to actually sit there and enjoy it. And when, quite frankly, like this, for me, you build it out to your ear and what you like and what you enjoy. This room has a sound as good as I could have hoped to achieve. Like, I really am happy, and I'm also I will say that it's hard when you're into this hobby not to get on the upgrade path where you're like, oh, speakers are good, I can do better. Maybe I'll tweak the cables. Like, from the get-go, I put it together with the goal of not touching anything for quite some time. I wanted to build it right, and then turn my mind off and just enjoy it. So I'm not looking at any one piece of gear and saying, oh, I could do better. I did what I could afford. I put together a system that works together, and now I just sit back and enjoy it until I get hit by lightning or something falls apart. And other than that, it's just like, I use it. Like, this is a room I'm in all the time, and I get a lot of use out of it. I get a lot of enjoyment out of it, and I would do it again. And quite frankly, I don't know that I would really do anything different. So.
I'll be honest with you. The first time I handed the remote, I think he was probably like, "Oh man, I thought I was going to get a little more like we got to push this harder." And again, that was not understanding really how hard I could lean into these subwoofers, and quite honestly, the client introduced me to Harbottle. This is the first time I'd worked with Harbottle subwoofers and used them on a project, and I was so impressed with them. I'm like, I got to get involved with these guys, and I need to understand something more about this, because this I feel like we can lean on this more. And there was an opportunity to come back. We had an issue with the driver, and there was a temporary situation, and so it all kind of worked out where, like, yeah, I can get a lot more out of this. I'm coming back. Let's do this. I mean, nobody gets into this to go like, yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, it's like I gotta blow your doors, right? That's the whole promise and proposition here. So we came back and worked through that again, and gratefully the client was the best client you could hope for. It's like, yeah, come back. Let's tune and tweak on this some more. Let's extract every ounce of this that we can. And now I understood really what was capable. Because I'll be honest, I went into it initially thinking like, oh yeah, I see all kinds of, yeah, sure, these things are okay, whatever, yeah, and I had no idea. I mean, I'll just straight tell you, I did not understand out of the gate like how capable these were, and that how if I spent some time with Cody, the owner of Harbottle, getting a better understanding and a deeper dive into how he engineers his products and what his expectations are of the product, and then having the opportunity to come back and say, okay, let's run at this again. Yeah, second go around, I think we're doing okay now. Client was quite happy, and I'll tell you, I would hope I would have heard about it by now if he wasn't. So I think we're quite good, and that's the most gratifying thing. I mean, to take all of this is just a collection of bits, right? It's a room, it's speakers, it's wires, it's all this stuff, right? And when we get the opportunity then to come in and refine it and get all of these things playing ball in their most linear area, and where everybody's happy and it's just delivering its best work and its best result, that's really, really gratifying. I mean, I played in bands for a long time. We did records. We went on tours. I became a recording engineer. I was recording. I had more fun building these rooms and putting them together, to be quite honest, than I ever did really recording. I mean, handing something like this off to a recording engineer who their studio is the instrument, or handing this beautiful media room, the cinema, to the client. It's like, this is your relaxation area. You get to enjoy this every day. Like that's really gratifying to me. And so to see a client like get excited about their space, it's really good. I mean, I'm not curing cancer, but we're delivering a little bit of joy for somebody, and that's, I think that is important. We probably all need a little more of that.
Welcome back to Epic Home Theater Tours. I'm your host, Hatoraid Cowboy, and I'd like to thank Cody from Hard Bottle for sponsoring this home theater tour. So I'm in Utah, Park City, and got beautiful weather here. We've got mountains, snow top, and this is a very unique home theater. We've got dolly speakers, we've got 4 8-inch hard bottle subs, we've got a massive TV, a beautiful room that was just carefully designed, and I can't wait to show it to you. I hope you guys enjoy the video, and I want to know what you guys think down in the comments about this space. If you guys have any experience with hard bottle or dolly speakers, I want to know that as well. So without further ado, let's get into the tour. All right, guys, so I've got Noah here with me. He is the homeowner of this amazing, wonderful home theater in Utah. Nice to meet you, man.
Pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming.
So let's talk a little bit about your system. We're going to have you go around the room and talk about your gear, but just to be clear so that nobody gets anything confused, you weren't paid to make this review, right?
No, not at all.
You weren't coached on what to say.
No, we're just meeting and you're just throwing questions at me and we're just going to go with the flow.
All right, cool. So yeah, I've got some questions here that I want to ask you. Got my iPad that way I don't forget what I want to ask. So as far as hard bottle, in your opinion, what separates hard bottle from the rest of the industry subwoofer offerings? I know you've had some different subwoofers before in different systems. So what was it that made you want to go with hard bottle after seeing the other speaker companies?
So spent a lot of time planning out this room, speccing out the equipment, designing it, working with Alex to kind of help put it together, and auditioned a lot of equipment. And quite frankly, didn't come across any subs that met all the points I wanted to have in the room. So, you kind of want the best of both worlds. Wanted a sub that hit hard on movies, had good impact, was exciting to listen to, but also was complementary to music. So I listened to a lot of music, and a lot of subs just don't do music very well and don't integrate with, high-end loudspeakers very well. They're not fast enough to keep up. They just don't play nicely. So I could not find a mass market offering that I heard that I liked. So I kept looking around and I came across the brand and started researching it. And so that's where I got to, because there was nothing else that hit the wants of what I needed.
So I think you mentioned this before. You hadn't heard hard bottle before, right? This was
a very big leap of faith purchase. And it was, everything else in the system I got to demo. So this was a little clenchy and hopeful that it worked out. So basically, couple things. Reached out to the owner, Cody, had a lot of good talks with him. And the answers he gave me were engineering-based answers, not sales-based answers, right? So I like the fact that he was coming in with an engineer's background, answered my questions technically, didn't throw fluff out, didn't make promises, put me in touch with a few references that I called up around the country. And they were similar to me as far as they had passion projects, they put together their theater, they shopped equipment, and they really enjoyed the product. And those reviews, I purchased 4 subs and I waited the 4 months while they were produced, and it did not, it crossed my mind a few times. I really hope they work out. So yeah, it was a leap of faith.
Yeah, and you actually touched on the question that I was going to ask you next about Cody. So I've never met Cody in person, but we've done some live streams together. I've heard one of his subs at another home theater. Amazing subs, super knowledgeable guy. You can tell that he's an engineer. So what is it that you appreciate about Cody? I know that you said, when you asked him questions, he gave you answers from an engineering background, but why do you like working and talking with Cody so much?
I've never met him in person, spoken on the phone with him maybe 4 or 5 times. I like direct answers. I like no fluff. I like technically understanding why something does what it does and someone taking the time to educate me on it, right? So, you're putting down good money on a purchase. You want to feel that what you're getting has the quality behind it. And like I said, I've listened to a lot of subs and a lot really fell short. So, that's part of it.
So what was the one thing that clinched the decision to pull the trigger with Hard Bottle Subwoofers? Now, you commented on that before. How many other brands would you say that you've demoed before Hard Bottle?
As many as I possibly could.
Now, we talked about that earlier. You said that you were planning this room for how many years?
So I had a home theater in my previous home, and that was more of a DIY project. Built the room out myself, put the equipment in, and of course I had an integrator help me. But I did a lot of the tuning on the processor myself, placed the subs, placed the speakers, built out bass traps and sound traps, and did everything myself, right? So this room was a big part of sort of designing the house out, where the room sat, the size of it, isolation of it from other spaces. So this was a very thought out part of a new construction build. So I got to do everything from scratch as far as wiring and spacing and sizing and mech rooms and everything else.
Yeah, and you said that you spent pretty much a couple years demoing tons of speakers.
4 years. So I went to audio shows. I was at that point in South Florida, and there's a fairly good density of audio dealers in South Florida, and I went to everyone that I could. So every major brand that had a good showroom I went down to Miami. There were brand showrooms down there as far as, an audio brand had a designated premier theater that they built, and it's amazing how many spaces are unimpressive.
That's true.
Quite frankly.
Yeah. So when you first got Hard Bottle subs in, obviously it's not calibrated or anything like that. What was your first impressions when you turned them on and listened to them for the first time?
So after getting them downstairs,
I don't know how you did that.
getting them in place, they weren't just turned on per se. Let me think about this. Turned them on, broke them in, ran them in, listened to a little bit of music. It's hard to tell until it's integrated, quite frankly.
So what were your thoughts when you first got them integrated then, compared to your previous systems?
So, yeah, like I said, I wanted a sub that was really good on movies, had enough impact, and also played music well and integrated well with my speakers. So ported subs to me are too slow. They get bloaty. They're awesome on movies. They do not convey music well, and they don't integrate with a lot of speakers well. So the Hard Bottles are sealed. They are a very kind form factor. So for the amount of output they have, it's a relatively small box. It's a very good looking subwoofer, and it integrates into this design of this room very well. So it kind of hit all the high points of all the design worked. It fit into the room. It had the output specs I was hoping for. And when I turned them on and Alex spent his time tuning them in, blending them in, they're pretty awesome.
So in your opinion, does Hard Bottle deliver on the promise?
I'd buy them again. So, after living with them for 6-7 months now, happy with the purchase. I'd happily buy them again. I haven't come across any other subwoofers I'd buy over them. I like supporting mom and pop smaller brands. And I like the fact that, it's an independently owned company. It has someone who is very passionate about their product behind it, and is putting their heart and soul into building their own small business and supporting that. I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. So now you're living with LDLC, which is low distortion, low compression engineering by Harbottle. Can you give us an analogy in what this system is like in full power immersion mode?
On movies, it hits hard. It's quick. It's tight. Bass is awesome. And then I play music, and they complement the speakers, and they integrate well. And I have large full range towers, and even in frequencies that the towers produce perfectly themselves, when you blend the subs in, it's additive. It doesn't take away from what the main tower can do themselves.
Yeah, and I think we were talking about that too, because the drivers on the dollies are what size again?
So it has two 11.5-inch bass drivers.
11.5 inch. So trying to integrate an 18-inch with 11.5-inch. Tell me about that. You said that you were kind of worried about that, but no issues there, right?
Yeah, well, it's just the dollies are a very fast articulate speaker, and a lot of subs I think would do them a disservice, right? So you'll definitely get more frequencies go lower, but almost all recorded music doesn't have anything in the low frequencies, right? So if you can reproduce 40 hertz, 50 hertz cleanly, that's going to do great. And the Harbottles do that in spades. Like, they really do a good job at that. Whereas, the previous subs that I had could not keep up with the main speakers as well.
And then finally, how do you feel being in what Cody calls the elite subwoofer class, where everything about the Carbon series is crafted in the name of ultimate precision performance? Do you think that that's a true statement?
All I care about is if I watch my movies and listen to my music and it makes me smile, and they certainly do that. As far as anything else, they complement the room, they complement the system, they do everything I hoped they would. And the risk that I took on kind of purchasing them sight unheard, I guess that's a phrase, is I wasn't disappointed, and I'd buy them again.
Sounds good. Well, you've got an awesome system here. In a little bit, I'm going to have you take me around the room.
Sure.
But why don't we transition to Alex? I'm going to ask him some questions, and then we'll continue with the rest of the home theater tour. All right, Alex, same question. You're not being paid to say anything good about Harbottle, anything like that.
No, he doesn't have enough money to pay me to say something good about our bottle.
There you go.
That was a cold, hard facts of life. No, and in full disclosure, no, of course not. But I am a rep and do resell Harbottle and spec Harbottle in some of my projects. So that just so we're clear about that. But I'm certainly not being offered any cash advance to speak kindly of the product. He doesn't need to.
Okay. So along those lines, in your opinion, what separates Harbottle from the rest of the industry subwoofer offerings?
There's a lot of unique things about working with Harbottle that we don't see anywhere else in the industry. One of the prime examples is the relationship between the main engineer and designer Cody and the representatives and resellers. There's a pretty stringent process to get involved with Harbottle to resell the products, which is there's a lot of engineering understanding that has to happen. I learned a lot more. I thought I knew a lot about loudspeakers and subwoofers before getting involved with Harbottle, and the knowledge has increased considerably. And that expectation that the rep is going to be directly involved with and supporting the project, and that there's this commitment to the client, that we're not just pushing boxes, is really quite different. It's a custom proposition, right? We're not, this isn't look up on Amazon or online anywhere and find a Harbottle sub and order it and then have it delivered to your house. There's a relationship. There's an engineering discussion. We like to know what's going on in the project, what's the room, so we can help the client get the solution for their particular project. Between all of the different offerings and options, there's nearly 800 different subwoofer models you could create with what's available in hand in the in-hand engineering. Now, naturally, there's a lot that we go to that are kind of more commonplace, but we do have the ability through Harbottle to be able to engineer and design customized solutions for the project at hand. So there's more of we put a lot more effort on the front end in trying to understand the client's needs and getting them something that isn't going to be another, end up in disappointment and disillusionment at the end of the fact. That's a big key critical difference. Another one is how all the reps and all the people who are associated with Hardball work together. So we all support each other. We're set up in different regions, including out in India now, overseas. So trying to expand the overseas market, and everyone kind of supports each other. So if I have a question about something or need some modeling, I can talk to Niall at Acoustic Frontiers out in California. We got a project in Texas. We can converse with Jeff Mary out there. We've got a Noop of Quaver Audio out on the East Coast. So everyone's supporting each other, helping each other out, and that's quite different. That's the expectation from Cody of how Harbottle works together with its reps and resellers and dealers. So quite a different proposition from sign up, fill on the box, give us your tax ID number, and you can sell something, which also means that there's a lot of expertise within the company and the people who are helping you make sure that you're getting the right product for the project, and you're getting the best value in the support and the product and the final delivery of the end result. These aren't just a simple, plug and play proposition. As I said earlier, there was a learning curve to understand how capable these things really are, and there are considerations there. When you have an 18-inch subwoofer and 4 of them in a room that'll play well below 10 cycles at volume, you got to consider, can the structure support it? Now we need some engineering. We have to be more involved. Gratefully, I haven't killed anybody with one of our theaters and haven't anything come down yet, but that's always a consideration. Again, matching the subwoofer to the particular project and making sure that we're involved, and we have this network of different expertise. A lot of guys, some of the guys are quite comfortable with remodel work. I work in the pro space primarily, so dubbing stages, Atmos production rooms, recording studios, and so forth. And so everyone's kind of got their area of expertise, and we're all working together. So it's that on its own is quite different. We are essentially an extension of the engineer and the owner of Hardbottle. We can recertify products as new. We can behave as of representatives of the owner himself. So that puts a lot of work we have to do to make sure we're on top of our game, but it also provides the client a very high level of service and expectation and support well after the subs have been tuned and we've walked away.
So I know you mentioned before Cody doesn't have enough money to pay you, so to say good things about him. So what is it like to work with Cody?
Cody's. I'm going to regret saying that now. No, Cody's fantastic to work with, and very patient and very thorough. I would definitely say thorough. The training and just what he expects about our understanding about the LDLC concept, which we'll probably talk about in a second, and what the expectation is and how to deal with the clients and so forth. Like, he really puts a lot of effort and time into his guys, me, some of the other reps, etc., to make sure, and is very careful about how we're presenting and representing Hardbottle out in the world. So he definitely demands a lot. I mean, I've never been involved with a company that demanded as much from the reps or the resellers in terms of commitment, focus, technical knowledge, expertise, all of these kind of things. But he makes the effort to spend that time, and so that we're understanding the mission, what his goal is. And it's easier if you have complete understanding of something, and it's there's no to use Noah's word, there's no fluff. It's easy to get behind the product and speak about it with confidence, because it is really that good and really that unique. And so it's nice to have essentially the engineer and the designer's number and be able to call them and get them on the phone anytime and go, hey, we've got this issue. What would you think about this? I'm thinking of this product for this project. What do you think? And so being able to work directly, I mean, imagine if name any of the major, imagine if you could get a hold of somebody at Harman and go, hey man, we've got this project. What do you think? Like, that's a difficult proposition, because it's small, because it's bespoke, because it's custom. We have this, you have this relationship with the owner in engineering which you typically don't have with the larger companies. And it also means we have a lot more input, about what gets pursued, what gets built. Hey, what do we need out there in the world? What are we missing? Where can we improve? So that back and forth, it's really good. And gratefully, I think everybody involved with Harbottle is open to and interested in learning more and improving and getting better. I mean, ideally every job, it gets better every single time, right? We get that new experience. I mean, my first experience with Harbottle was on this project, and I was so impressed that I wanted to get involved with them on a deeper level and be able to offer this into my project. So, and all of that is because of Cody and the engineering. The product's good, the support is great, and you have somebody at the top running the show that's really passionate and well educated and very good at breaking down really complex behavior so that the layperson can understand. So he's really a pleasure to work with him.
This room is pretty complex. We've got glass on one side, and then, design and decoration is the focus. So what was your certification training like to help build a room like this?
Yeah, so any of these rooms, all of the basic acoustical knowledge, all the base foundational stuff, it's all well understood. We know these things are all fairly well agreed upon. And of course, we model, and we were joking about this earlier, right? We build models and we try to model the behavior in the room. We try to create something to point at, right? Some target to hit, and we create these metrics. And like we were joking earlier, right? All models are bad. Some models are useful, right? And so, based on the small room behavior that we understand and know quite well, yeah, it's a piece of glass. It also means it's reflective. Well, so is the wall. So some of this behavior, we get into like the admittance of the walls, and that becomes probably the hardest thing to model and to account for, meaning like how much does this thing absorb, right? What is like this acoustic impedance? Like we've got this glass that's very difficult to model, or even a dual layer wall. At what frequency is it going to absorb? And that's always, whenever we're asking any of these questions, like what we say, okay, well, behavior XYZ, the next thing is always followed with what frequency are we talking about? Because everything in this, all of this is frequency dependent. And so the small room behavior, we understand it. I mean, I've been involved with hundreds of recording studios, Atmos production rooms, home cinemas, and every job you're collecting and harvesting all this knowledge and things that you figured out on projects. And I'm happy to report that my later rooms sound a lot better than my first room. We're heading in the right direction, right? And so all of that experience that gets delivered on the next project, the next project gets the benefit of all of that experience. And you have essentially, when we look at the room, and I think what's different about what Harbottle does, and certainly something that's how I always consider it, is that the whole, and this isn't a new I didn't verbalize this concept. This is my idea, but the whole thing is a system, right? And if you think about it that way, and you start there, all of this becomes a lot more, a lot easier to manage and deal with, right? And you also quit chasing, new loudspeakers every 6 months, because you realize like, wow, I keep spending more on loudspeakers, but they still sound horrible. I'm like, I wonder, maybe I should try working on the room. And if I'm always approaching it from that standpoint, so from a design and delivery standpoint, we're always looking at, okay, what's the room behavior? What do we need from the hardware, the loudspeakers, subwoofers, etc.? Where's the guy going to sit? What are we looking at? All of that is calculated and figured in every one of these designs. And if I think being able to deliver that, being able to talk to a client about, hey, we're looking at the whole thing, really separates a Harbottle and any of the reps when we're dealing with a project versus, say, you go to a XYZ integrator and like, hey, I need a sub. Okay, how much money do you want to spend is usually the next question. That doesn't really get to the crux of the problem or solving anything for the client, because a lot of We want to be delivering solutions. That's always the goal. It's always about what's the right solution for the deployment. And gratefully, with Harbottle, we have a professional tool that can cover a lot of bases, that has professional DSP, and we can manipulate it into getting a good result out of the project. And because it's been considered from the beginning, we go in knowing that this is going to be good, as we've made effort on the front end to ensure that it is.
So how did your certification that you just talked about, how did it prepare you for this complex calibration? You may have touched on it a little bit, but just briefly. Yeah.
So if we're talking certification with Harbottle specifically, that 100% improved my understanding of what these things were capable, because a part of this certification process and working with Harbottle is, of course, we're working with Cody and we're talking back and forth, understanding the engineering paradigms and what he's aiming at with these subwoofers, which brings us back to this LDLC concept, this low distortion, low compression, which, one of the things that's unique about Harbottle audio is that essentially this LDLC, this low distortion, low compression engineering spec is essentially informing all of the decisions. So what's the motor geometry? What's the box we're using? How powerful is the amplifier? All of this we have to be able to deliver essentially less than 1 dB of compression, be able to deliver the entire bandwidth that's afforded by the subwoofer at full stroke and at full power. So one of the things, that seems like, okay, yeah, full power, so what? Okay, what a big deal. Well, quite frequently we maybe have, you find the XYZ brand subwoofer and it's got a 1,000-watt amplifier, but you turn it up past 300 watts and it's distorting to the point that it's unusable. We don't have a balanced system. All the Harbottle product, every decision that's falling under this LDLC paradigm, every decision has to improve the final product. So we're going to make a change to the box or do some different bracing, has to improve the time domain behavior of the box. The box is as important as the driver. If you think about how that's such a difficult proposition for a loudspeaker, where one half of it inside of a sealed closed box that's airtight, that's putting a lot of pressure on the back of the driver. The other side's just flapping in the wind. That's two very, very different environments in which this loudspeaker, this subwoofer, has to operate. So all of these decisions are taking all of this into account. It's really a holistic approach, but that sets the metric that, okay, we're going to have plus or minus 5% inductance linearity over the entire movement of the subwoofer at the full rated power. So you're getting every bit of performance that you're paying for out of the subwoofer. It isn't, hey, got this gigantic, look at this spec sheet that looks really great, and you can only turn it up halfway because the box blows itself apart, or it starts ringing, the box becomes resonant and you're hearing ringing and temporal distortions because the box can't handle the amount of pressure that's being exerted upon it. So this guarantee, that's something that's certainly that I probably should have mentioned earlier. It's very unique within the industry, because no one really makes this kind of claim. And again, to reiterate, all of these decisions, the inductance linearity, you go, well, why is that such a big deal? Well, that influences how the BL of the loudspeaker motor is behaving, the motor strength. Well, if this thing's behaving linearly, whether it's all the way out or it's on its way back in and it's behaving over the entire course linearly and the same, less distortions, and better heat management, and all of these things under the hood, where the client at the end is just like, I don't know, this sounds ripping, it's not distorting, it sounds incredible, but all of that is very deliberate. We didn't get there by accident, and they are understanding all of this. This is part of the certification. Part of it is running what we call the fruit test, which is a full rated use test, in which we light up the entire system and run it, and we get this thing, we push this thing to a limit to find out where it is, the entire system. Because when we hand this off to a client, we gotta ensure that they're playing it at a safe level, not only for their hearing, but for also all of this equipment. These are motors. They have a limit. They all do, right? It's a motor. It's a moving part. They have their limits. But generally speaking, as part of that test, we're firing up the system. We're playing content. We're getting everything nice and warm. And we're making sure that behavior, that our heat management and the subwoofer itself is behaving as expected, that we're not overheating. The aluminum dust caps on the front of these carbon fiber cone drivers is intentional. That's part of the cooling assembly, right? All of this is considered. So that's part of essentially trying to help manage some of the heat. So running this full rated use test, which is unique, that would happen as part of a calibration. So if we're talking about the Obsidian line, which was formerly carbon, which is what we have here, part of the prospect is that, and part of the proposition, is that you're getting a calibration with this, right? So I come out, we calibrate it, dime every little bit of performance we can get out of the system, set the limit so the client can have something that they can turn on and have fun with and remain safe and not induce any damage in the system, but also make sure everything's operating in its where it's linear, right, throughout its bandwidth. So a lot of this, all of this was part of understanding this and applying this engineering precept as part of the certification system to work with Harbottle and to be able to deploy and deliver these systems. So quite different from anybody I've ever worked with. I can say that with certainty. There's nobody else that's pushing that hard on the reps to deliver that level of service and understanding and commitment to the project even after the fact.
From a design perspective, does Harbottle's LDLC, low distortion, low compression engineering offer any advantages over the competition? And maybe you can just briefly tell people what that low distortion, low compression, why that's important.
Yeah. So again, to revisit this, the low distortion, low compression engineering paradigm, if you will, from Harbottle is essentially setting kind of the expectation limit of the system. So we're saying that the system can deliver at less than 1 dB of compression. You're going to get the full rated output of the and bandwidth of the system. So let's say the subwoofer, because we can change the bandwidth of the subwoofer depending on what you need for the particular project, which again, something that's unique about Harbottle. But the precept is over the full stroke of the subwoofer, right? The full mechanical stroke of a usable stroke of the subwoofer at full rated output power, and we'll talk about that in a second, kind of what differentiates the different lines. But a full rated output power, the distortion will be inaudible at 1 dB worth of compression over the entire bandwidth at full mechanical travel at full output. It's the only one that's the only company that's guaranteeing this in terms of like, this is the engineering expectation. All of the products will meet this expectation, and the engineering starts where he's considering, okay, amplifiers, for example. The engineering starts all the way down at 5 cycles, so 5 hertz. So we're into infrasonic. Well, why is that an advantage if we're starting at 5 cycles? Well, if we're thinking about what it takes to reproduce 5 cycles and the period, how long it takes, if you're a power amplifier and we have a wavelength that's super long, we have to be able to supply energy to the driver over that amount of time. Well, in any amplifier, capacitors are draining down. You may have something that's under specified, and now you're not able to deliver that 5 cycle sine wave because the amplifier itself can't deliver power that long without distortion or without going into compression or thermal limits, etc. So if we start at 5 cycles, yeah, a 12-inch sealed tradition sub isn't going to put out earth ground shaking bass at 5 cycles. That's not the claim. But the understanding is an octave up from that, 10 cycles, we're going to have some decent output at 10 cycles. And as we move more into the operational bandwidth of the subwoofer, obviously you're going to have more output, and it's going to do it comfortably without distortion. I mean, the big advantage there. And anybody who hears these subwoofers, you can't unhear it. They don't sound, they're not full of the temporal distortions. They don't sound, I hate to use this word because it's not very good descriptive word, but they don't sound fuzzy. There's no blur around them. They have all the impact. They have all the power you would expect in the slam, but there's just no noise. There's no, where the distortions are gone. And of course, a lot of the line that we're talking about here today with the Obsidian and the Signature and the Tradition line, these are all sealed boxes as well. And again, this is very difficult to do, to get this kind of high output without leveraging a tuning port. And there's obviously other benefits of dealing with sealed subwoofers, like the room gain advantage, and of course, the roll off being a more natural roll off that hands off to the room, especially below whatever the first order, the lowest axial mode is in the room. Aside from that, and we touched on this earlier a little bit with the inductance linearity, and the inductance linearity has direct influence and is working hand in hand also with the BL, with the motor strength, like we discussed earlier. So if the loudspeaker is behaving more uniformly over, no matter where it is in its travel, you got to remember, we have a magnet, you have a coil, things are moving, right? It's not a stationary proposition. This thing is moving back and forth. And with this LDLC is the guiding principle, which is informing decisions like unique motor geometry, shorting rings, how do we manage the cooling, what's the material of the cone, what are we using for the surround, what's happening with the spider. All of these individual decisions are subject to this LDLC paradigm. That's kind of the guiding principle of all of it, but all of this has to work in concert to deliver something that, when it's moving over its stroke, the inductance is behaving the same way, which in turn means the motor strength isn't changing all over all over the stroke of the motor, which means in turn, quite frankly, lower distortion, quite simply, and better thermal management. So these things can play louder and not have the heat. The problem of the heat. These things heat up. So this motor gets hot. So by managing that linearity, you're making the whole as a component is behaving linearly over its full stroke, and the benefits are huge. And the payoff for the client is they play loud without distortion. I mean, the distortion, once you hear these, it's hard to go back to other subwoofers because it's kind of uncanny. We're so used to hearing, quite frankly, we're just used to and have accepted, listening to bass with a lot of distortion and fuzz or hair around it, if you will, lower fidelity. And when you hear these and you get it integrated in a room that's working right and the system's behaving well together, it's uncanny how clean and how low they will play. I think that's a big part of it as well. When the whole, that part of the LDLC, this is the engineering guiding principle or mission statement, if you will, but all of that's supported by, again, all the other decisions downstream. The amplifier, all the motor components and geometry, the box. What's the bracing on the box? Why did we go through this effort to wrap this thing and create this exoskeleton, if you will, of carbon fiber around the box to reduce the temporal distortions, to maximize everything is optimized. I really can't take this motor on an Obsidian and put it in a Tradition box and hope that it works out right. That's too much motor for that box. So everything is matched. And when we look at the Obsidian line, the amplifiers, we've got make sure I'm correct on this, 4,800 watts, I think, two 2,400 watt amplifiers, so 4,800 watts RMS total available to each of the, so you've got 2,400 watts per coil or dual voice coil driver. You've got the most amount of power that's delivered essentially to a single drive unit in the 4,800 watts, which also means you're peaking at just under 10K, like in a single box. That's crazy. In the Noah had mentioned this, in what is a relatively small size box for a sealed loudspeaker, and now you have this LDLC driver that's designed really, I think around 76 to 80 millimeters of travel. Like all of these things working in concert, all of them at the max level. The Obsidian, formerly Carbon, is the reference subwoofer. So suitable in recording studios, dub stages, obviously high spec home cinemas and private screening rooms. I mean, it's the reference level offering. Everything is optimized. We're delivering this, of course, with the calibration. Right, we got to make sure they're tuned and integrated correctly in the room. And again, all of that born out of that LDLC concept, influencing all those decisions downstream. So we have a subwoofer now that can quite easily play down into infrasonics and has meaningful output. I mean, in this room, when I did my first manual calibration to rough everything in before we went to work with the trend op, I was easily seeing over the full bandwidth of the sub between 10 cycles out to almost 120. I was running it as an LFE and also as a base management sub, C4. We were flat out to 10 cycles, and I was about 4 or 5 dB down at 6 cycles with 18-inch subwoofers, right? Not 60-inch subwoofers. Not like, I get it, and that stuff's fun, but not always practical. So we have a really powerful tool here where all of a sudden now a dub stage where they're leasing a space and they're not going to build in a 60-inch subwoofer. Well, now you can get some 18s or 21s or 24s and get into infrabass with something that's a reasonable size, at a relatively, compared to some of the larger drivers, relatively affordable. As you go into the signature line, this is essentially Cody's, the engineer's dream subwoofer. So you have, again, a box that's, he pays a lot of attention to the box. The box is a big part of the proposition here. So the box has additional bracing over, say, the traditional line, so you're getting better performance, more inert performance essentially out of the enclosure. The amplifiers are 2,400 watts to each of the drivers in there, and again, we can go custom sizes on those, custom finishes, and it's a little more, as a general statement, a little more limited in the extension and the bandwidth. His feeling, his design, his aesthetic is that, okay, the speakers better play down to 80, or like, what are we, doing here? And so if we can do this with the bandwidth and make it a little smaller, maybe it doesn't have to play all the way out to an LFE. And they will. Something I keep kind of glossing over is they will play at full rated bandwidth at full power. As you start to open that bandwidth up, as you tell a sub, like, hey, you got to play 200 cycles and 20 cycles, forget it. Your amplifier, as you start to go higher, you run out of amplifier. As you start to go lower, you run out of stroke. You run out of mechanical stroke. In resonance, everything's like nice and easy, right? At resonance is the easy button. It's where we're the most efficient, right? Below that, you're stroke limited. Above that, you become limited with the amplifier's capability. And I've done plenty of tests in my shop where you take a sub, run it with the 80 hertz low pass filter on it, and maybe it plays to 105 before it starts, breaking apart. You take that same sub and make it play, but just take the filter off, let it play out to 200 cycles. You're getting 95, 98. I mean, it's really a big deal to ask it to play that far out. With the signature line and Cody's kind of stamp of what he likes to see, hey, let's maximize the efficiency of all these things, the enclosure. Let's do this. So now my 2,400 watts are centered in this range where I really want the sub to take over. And of course, now we've got a system where we're just kind of, we're moving the efficiency and moving it into an area where he feels like this sub should operate, and they're a fantastic subwoofer. And these Obsidian line and the Signature are all underhung motors, so the voice coil is staying inside the gap the entire time. That's a big part of maintaining the linearity. When we go into the Tradition line, Tradition is, as the name implies, more traditional as far as subwoofers are concerned, using an overhung motor. The boxes aren't as, the boxes improve, and by improve, it's saying that they're matched to the driver that they're in bed with, right? Because you can't separate the box from the loudspeaker. Same way you can't separate that tower from what's going on in this room. They're in bed together. So we have, I guess probably a better way to express it is that it's the appropriate bed for the subwoofer driver that you're putting in this box. Excuse me. They're all matching. Those are offered with 2200 watt amplifiers. If you go into a rack mount version of those, it does go up to a 2400 watt amplifier. But again, you're talking a single 12. All the LDLC engineering paradigm, full use over the entire rated bandwidth. That sub might extend out to 200 cycles. You're going to get that you're going to get clean and linear behavior all the way out at full rated power. So everything, all the limits land at the same time. And so that's really, if we think about it, that's a balanced system. Everybody, when you hit the end of the motor, everybody's like, I'm done. The box is there, the amp is there, the driver's there. It's all matched. So it's really how these are being differentiated. As you move up the line, you get into Obsidian. It's like, it's bonkers, right? 10,000 watt peaks, like crazy. Okay, big amplifier, big dual voice coil driver. This box better be able to hang on. And that carbon, that carbon enclosure, that's not decorative. That is laminated to the box. And you wrap on one of those things and it goes thump. I mean, it's you're eliminating a lot of the resonances in the panel. It's really quite good. So there, I think that I hope I've done service to expressing the differences as you move through the lines.
So I'd like to give you guys a little tour of my theater space. I think a good place to start is the most important place, which is the acoustics of the room. So as you see, we have a slat ceiling, slat front wall, which the wood slats act as to scatter the sound. But they also hide acoustic treatments. So there is 4 inches of rigid acoustic insulation behind the front wall slats, and there's 10 inches above the ceiling. So this space has functionally about a 11-foot ceiling, taking in above the slats to the drywall cap above. The whole room is acoustically isolated. The wall construction is drywall, green glue, 3/4 inch plywood, resilient isoacoustic channels, and then onto the studs. All the walls are fully insulated. Ceiling is the same construction. So having a rigid box, a sealed door, bottom sweep, full exterior seals, solid door, to have your acoustic space be able to be pressurized. The room has a mini split going to it, so there's no sound going through the ductwork to other spaces. So first off, I think that it's very important to have a acoustically friendly environment before you start spending a lot of money on equipment, because the money you spent won't be fully realized as far as quality unless your room is good. So for main speakers, I chose Dolly Core. I spent about 4 years planning this theater out, auditioned every speaker I could at different shows, different retailers, different showrooms. Had the pleasure of demoing from all the major brands you'd expect at this price point. And a good friend of mine in Chattanooga had these speakers paired with Mac 1.25 kilowatt amps, and his room sounded awesome. And no matter what demo place I went to, his system still sounded the best to me. The voicing of the speakers met what I was looking for. I'd lived with speakers with beryllium tweeters for about 8 years, and beryllium can be bright. A soft dome tweeter to me is a much more natural sound, and these pair a 35 millimeter soft dome with a ribbon super tweeter crossed over around 12,000 hertz, and that gives a nice airy wide dispersion soundstage. And if you have the opportunity, these are speakers worth demoing. They're really special. Powering them, we have a Mac 2.1 kilowatt stack, so ample power, 2,000 watts RMS to each main speaker, and that warmth of the Macintosh amp pairs really well with these speakers, and it just makes a huge sound stage and a lot of impact. There's great bass notes down low. As far as you don't even have to turn the volume off up to enjoy really enjoyable music. Working our way in, we have our first Harbottle sub, and this is the front two subs for a waveforming arrangement. It's a spherical waveforming with Trinov. I have two subs in the back corners. All four are identical 18-inch Harbottles with dual voice coil and over 4,000 watts RMS power, over 10,000 watts peak. Those subs put out great, quick bass, tight, articulate, great with music, excellent with music, movies, and they pair really well with these Dolly cores. They're fast enough to keep up with them, which says a lot because the core is a very articulate speaker, and the subs pair great, sonically fade into the background, and add a lot of information to music that you would not get when you end your information at 26 hertz, like the roll-off is for the Dolly core. So adding that low octave really adds a lot to certain things. Center channel is a Dolly Epicor bookshelf speaker. My friends at Dolly, both Jason and Thomas, helped me just get a single bookshelf because Dolly does not make a matching center channel. This bookshelf uses the same super tweeter module as the core, same size mid-range, but it's a different driver because it's a dual voice coil arrangement in the core, and it pairs really nicely. Speakers on a Butcher Block acoustic block, as are the 2.1 kilowatt amps. And I met the owner at Expona. His name's Jim, super nice guy, father-son business, loves supporting small businesses and passionate people. So he was great to work with. He was able to make these and the stands for me. And over for cabling, there's a manufacturer in Canada, NRG Cables. They're basically 6-gauge braided cables. He has different sheaths, aesthetically very pleasing. Performance-wise, they've been great, very fairly priced, and did not want to get into esoteric cable pricing. Wanted to make sure I had ample copper and good hookup, and these cables perform as I'd expect, and they're very good. For a TV, we did a 110-inch Hisense monitor. I did not want to do a projector in this theater. The reasons were, one, I like the black levels and Dolby Vision support of HDR10 of a DirectView TV. It's super bright, great image, and with the Dolly core setup, I'm limited on screen size, so 110, 120 inches is as big as I would go anyway. So the 110-inch Hisense works great. So very happy with the image, very happy with the presentation of it, and it's worked great. So on the back wall, we have Dolly Rubicore on walls for surrounds. So 2 rear channels. The height channels are the same speakers in a different color that are suspended from brackets so we can aim them at the main listening position. The side surrounds are Dolly Towers. They're Rubicore 6s that are on either side. And then in the back of the room, we have some hoods from old 1973 Porsche that I have. This is the original hood. And then since it's in an acoustic environment, it's dynamatted. And then we have, I have about 3 inches of rigid sound insulation behind that, so there's no resonance behind. And then the back of the room is basically, so the back of the room you want diffusion, right? And rather than doing prefab diffusers, did sort of collection of stuff that we had. I had So these are 12-inch steel shelves that are attached to the framing of the house, and then actually that's a cement wall, and then it is mudded over, so they're mudded into the wall. They're lit with LED strips, and then have just various items that you collect over life. So my grandmother's sewing machine that I used to fix for her when I was a little kid. She's a seamstress, so this is something near and dear to me. Her husband, my grandfather, was at D-Day. His bayonet and field knife that were rusted and restored, and hand sandpaper down, kept the pitting, and just something I remember both of them by, as they were very important in my life. And then collection of parts from the old Porsche, rear open diff, old speedometer, coils, valve covers, differential plate, gears from both a 915 gearbox and a G50 gearbox. Basically just a array of random shapes in order to act as a diffuser, but also be aesthetic, and also have things that have significance to me. Watch boxes from watches I've collected, a wood bowl from my family's land in Hawaii from a Norfolk pine that my first cousins planted when they were like 3, and then the tree grew to about 50 feet and was blocking microwave transmission for Hawaii Telecom, so they had to cut the tree down. So everyone in the family had a wood bowl made, and helmets from when I was racing, and a bunch of these are wood shift knobs for the old Porsche that are made out of skateboard decks from someone in England. So he laminates old vintage skateboard decks and will make shift knobs, and that's the back of the room. And then a wood paddle from my grandmother in Hawaii that I got for my 50th birthday, and some Porsche artwork, and yeah, that's the back of the room. But like most importantly for the acoustic part is everything is damped on rubber, nothing vibrates, and everything is meant to kind of just be a random array of shapes and sizes and materials in order to diffuse the sound in the back of the room. So I'm going to start again with acoustics, both decorative, and so these are hoods from a vintage Porsche that I have. The hoods are damped with Dynamat, and then have 2 inches of rigid insulation tucked behind them, so there's no resonance from behind. They're on a damped channel, L channel bracket, so they're secure to the wall, damped away from the wall, and the metal is so that it will not resonate, and there's no resonance from behind. Side surrounds are Dolly Rubicore 6 speakers. It's a nice mid-sized tower, very affordable tower, and I had to use these as my mains for about 4 months while I was moving and setting up the system, and they were great. So really enjoyed them, and are overkill for side surrounds, but I've been very happy with them.
Hey guys, welcome to the machine room on this project, in which all of the equipment that drives the system is quietly here doing its job. I want to talk a little bit about what's in the rack here, the amplification, our AV audio processor, sources, and so forth. So I think to make this make sense, we'll follow in logical order. We'll start with the sources and go all the way out to the power amplification, which will of course lead to the loudspeakers. And before I do anything else, I do want to give a shout out to our pals over at Ratio AV here that were a pleasure to work with, did a great job, and are supporting this project really well. So if you're in the Utah area, they are certainly worth getting a hold of. They were great to work with on this project. So let's start with sources. On the music side of things, we've got a Roon Nucleus server. So Roon is handling all the music streaming services for this project. We of course have the requisite Apple TV that most of these projects have, right, for video content, as well as Apple Music. We do have down here, don't want to forget about this guy, Sony Blu-ray disc player. Oftentimes, a lot of titles aren't available on the streaming services like Apple or from Kaleidoscape, which we'll get to in a second. So having a Blu-ray disc player is a nice, simple option to keep that legacy content available. And also, quite frankly, I'll be honest with you, Dolby Atmos music playing off a Blu-ray disc still sounds better to my ear than anything coming off of any of the streaming services. So if you're a Atmos music fan, that's an absolute necessity. And of course, driving the movies at the best representation possible. Of course, we have a Kaleidoscape movie server system. This particular system is built around the Strato V for the player and a TerraPrime 8 terabyte server for the storage of the content. For those of you not familiar with Kaleidoscape, it's a unique service in that, first of all, it's not a streamer. All right, so you're going to get through Kaleidoscape access to a movie store. You're going to download the content to your server and play it directly from your system at the highest resolution, so uncompressed video and full bandwidth audio, and generally speaking, mixes that are as close to what you would experience in the cinema. Certainly a big improvement over the streaming options, be it Roku or Apple TV and so forth, and that is not an insignificant improvement. If you're building a dedicated room and a dedicated cinema, there's no reason not to include this and have it very high on your priority list. I mean, certainly, if we're building a high performance room like this, it's essentially it's a race car, and we're certainly not interested in dumping Coca-Cola in the gas tank. This is absolute necessity, in my opinion, and they've done a very good job of responding to the market and reducing the price, so allowing people to have different entry points into their ecosystem. So definitely worth investigating if you're getting serious about putting together a home cinema. All of these source devices, of course, are being handled by the Trinnov Altitude 16, so very capable audio processor for our system, and of course featuring the Trinnov's famous room optimization. This is a waveforming room, so we're using the cylindrical waveforming with the 4 subwoofers, as you undoubtedly saw earlier in some of the other clips. The Altitude 16, we're feeding the balanced analog XLR outputs from the Trinnov to drive to feed the amplifiers. This Macintosh amplifier here, this MC611, is driving the center channel. And you'll notice in some of the other clips that we have the 75th anniversary set up as monoblocks to run the Big Dally core left and right speakers. That center channel speaker, we wanted to have a similar voicing and similar character as far as the amplification, which is why we went with a Macintosh amp to drive the center channel speaker. Now, when we move into the ear level surround and the top channels, we're using ATI signature series amplifiers. ATI often gets forgotten about, and these guys have been around a long time and are quite good at making amplifiers, have a lot of options for different projects, including Class AB, Class D options at different power ratings. But these are doing an incredible job of handling the ear level surrounds and the top channels. And because all of those loudspeakers on the surrounds, on the LCR stage, everybody's using a similar amplifier topology, Class AB topology. It sounds very open and natural and smooth, and very, very easy to listen to this system, even at modest volumes, at high volumes. It doesn't break up. We have an immense amount of headroom. In fact, the entire cinema is running on roughly about 26 kilowatts, about 26,000 watts, a little over 26,000 watts over the entire cinema. And that's RMS, not peak. The subwoofers, of course, are looking at 4,800 watts each of Class D amplification to each one of those 4 subwoofers. So we have a lot of power reserves on hand and a lot of clean current delivery and capacity afforded by our Taurus power system that we'll talk about a little bit later. Other items that are of interest in the house here that we'll take a look at shortly: some Blue Sound nodes for the distributed audio system, so those are handling multi-zone audio throughout the rest of the property. NAD amplification to drive those systems, some Anthem amplification, some JL audio subs, so a little bit of everything throughout the project to deliver the client what they needed in terms of distributed audio. But here you have it, all the heart and soul behind the entire operation here, hidden quietly away in a proper machine room outside of the cinema. No lights, no noise, no heat. Be thinking about that also when you're designing your next space, to give yourself plenty of room for the equipment outside of the room, so you don't have to fight those heat and light pollution issues into your theater. Hey guys, let's take a second to talk about what we supplied this project for, clean power and surge protection and so forth. So in a lot of my systems, what I prefer to do is use an isolation transformer. And depending on the project, typically we're looking at something from Taurus Power. If we have to be outside, it might be controlled power systems, because they have enclosures that allow the transformer to be outside. And what we're doing through the use of this transformer is we're electrically disconnecting the entire media system and critical loads from the rest of the power delivery system to the house. So we're no longer being influenced or being hampered by motor loads, air conditioning loads, fluorescent light ballasts, all these things that kick hash back onto the power supply. And by using a dedicated isolation transformer, this is one of the most efficient ways to deliver the power throughout the project. We're going to use the isolation transformer on the secondary side to feed a sub-panel board like we have here. And in this particular system, and similar to what I would do in a recording studio, we're going to have an individual breaker tied to an individual receptacle out in the room, out in the studio, for a subwoofer, etc. And this allows us not just the ampacity, which of course we get without any issue. This keeps the noise floor down. We don't have a lot of gear connected together and contaminating each other through the electrical system. So a simple way to cover your entire system with clean power, with surge suppression, and it's kind of the best foundation in which to build a system. Consider an isolation transformer in your next project. And if you're building from ground up or you're doing a big retrofit, it's generally speaking more cost effective to go with an isolation transformer to cover the entire project than to add a lot of smaller point of use units, which, rack mount point of use units, which add up quite quickly. This is a more efficient way to get the project done. It's out every time.
So before we end this home theater tour, I hope you enjoyed it. And also thank you to Cody from Hard Bottle for sponsoring this amazing tour out here in Utah, Park City, Utah. So I just want to give you my thoughts on this system. So Dolly. I've only ever heard Dolly one time, and that was at Expona maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And obviously at Expona, it's not the proper environment. They had it in this massive open space. It sounded cool, but this was my first time hearing Dolly in a dedicated home setup and in a home theater setup where it's all Dolly speakers. And I have to say, I am thoroughly impressed. I think these might be the most detailed speakers that I've ever heard. I'm trying to think of anything else that comes close to it, but man, these things sound amazing. So, we watched a couple movie clips, or we watched many movie clips. We watched some movies, or watched a movie. We watched Predator Badlands. Now, I've seen it before, but Alex hadn't seen it, so we decided to just watch it. And we watched many video clips, Top Gun Maverick. We watched the eyeball scene from Blade Runner 2049. We watched Interstellar, the clip, the wormhole scene. And then we watched the clip from Dune, also another worm. Man, these things have just an airiness to them on the top end. Just the detail is incredible. So we also listened to some music, and man, we switched back and forth. So we went from just 2-channel, no subs, and then we went 2-channel with subs, and then we went 2-channel upmix to RL3D. And each time it got better. And we also did 2-channel with waveforming. So 2-channel with the subs, waveforming. I think the 2-channel with the subs and waveforming was the most potent. I mean, there was a tactile that is just absolutely incredible. The dollies by themselves, just 2-channel, I had to ask Noah if the subs were on. He was like, no, this is just 2-channel. So these things can put out some pretty potent bass, very impressive. But the detail on these things is just amazing. So you've got that dome tweeter, and then you've got that ribbon tweeter right above it. And man, we were listening to some music, and it's incredible the representation that you get from these when you hear someone playing a guitar, or you hear someone hitting the drums, or someone's playing a saxophone or something. You can hear the artist's hands when they're moving across the instrument, whether it's the drums or the drums, scraping across, the snare drum. I mean, it just sounds like you're in a live environment with the music. Just absolutely phenomenal. And the imaging on these is also incredible. So, when we were listening to 2-channel, we were listening to music. Obviously, if you have RO upmixing, it does some incredible stuff. But even just the 2-channel, I could hear different musicians playing different instruments, almost like it was pinpoint to where I could look at them in between the speakers. So, the guitar would come in, or the bass guitar would come in, the kick drum would come in, somebody would come in on the piano, and it's almost like you can pick out where each person is, when they were recording in the studio or at the live, the live concert. Just absolutely phenomenal. So I am a fan of Dolly speakers. I would love to get some in for review and see how these sound, in my setup. Hard bottle, man, there's not many other subwoofers that can hit like they do, with detail, clarity, zero distortion, and just absolutely pressurize this room with 4 subs. So he's got 2 subs up front and then 2 in the back, and they're doing cylindrical waveforming. Cylindrical waveforming is pretty awesome. Obviously, Alex, he took a lot of time to dial this setup in, and whether we were listening to cylindrical waveforming, whether we were listening to RO upmixing, whether we were just listening to, just a standard, home theater mix, man, these hard bottles, 24 inches or 18 inches, just absolutely slam. I've only heard hard bottle one other time, and that was at Doyle's home theater when he had the 24 inch. But these carbon fiber series, I think they're being rebranded to Onyx, I think. Man, these are incredible. These have so much headroom. It's just, I was talking to Alex and Noah, and they were saying that when we were watching Predator Badlands, we were listening at reference. And I remember watching the movie, I'm like, man, this sounds amazing, but you could crank it up even more. And he was like, no, that was reference. You don't want to go above that. And I was just blown away that there was absolutely no distortion. It was loud and it sounded phenomenal, but I was like, man, you can crank it up more. Didn't have to. So tons of headroom on the hard bottle subs. This is just an amazing room. I was concerned about the windows being there, if it was going to cause, some unnecessary reflections in the sound and stuff, but no issues, man. This room is really cool. I'm glad that I got to come out here in Park City, Utah. First time out here in Utah, just beautiful landscape. I wish it was snowing, but it wasn't. Apparently they had like the worst winter in like 40 years where it didn't snow, and it was like in the 60s or something like that. But man, I hope you guys enjoyed this tour. This was fun. I spent the last 2 days busted my butt filming pretty much all day from 10 o'clock till 5, 6, 7 o'clock. I actually have more filming to do. I think we're going to probably get something to eat, come back, and then I got to finish getting some B-roll. But this was a fun shoot, man. This was one of my favorite ones just because of the scenery and the camaraderie and the hospitality. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this home theater tour. Please make sure that you hit the like button, share it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video.